All rise. Court is now back in session.
All right, thank you everyone for your patience. We did work diligently and we are prepared to rule. Before the court is the appeal of Luka Pericic. This matter is an appeal of the state of San Andreas versus Luka Pericic, 2024 CM228. This matter has been fully briefed and the court has reviewed all submitted materials. A hearing was held on September 15th, 2024, and arguments were heard from the appellant and appellee. The appellant identifies no specific items of contention on appeal, instead focusing on the broader injustice that was done to him by finding him guilty. We deem these arguments to be assertions of error by the trial court and therefore the issues on appeal. The appellee has addressed each issue in its response. Neither party provided any arguments in their briefing about the standard of review that the court should consider for any of the issues presented. The court thus takes the opportunity to review sua sponte, the appropriate standard, and will advise of each standard at the outset of its review of each issue. The first issue before the court is an assertion that the trial court erred by finding that Mr. Pericic was illegally parked. Because this claim addresses a finding of the trial court, courts of appeals consider issues of this nature from the standard of review of clear error. We will therefore affirm for any reason in the record. During oral arguments, the appellant asserted that he was not illegally parked because his vehicle was more than 5 feet from the fire hydrant, because there was no sign indicating that parking was prohibited, because he was not obstructing traffic, and because the curb was not painted red. By contrast, the appellee asserted that the penal code defines illegal parking as parking in any location, quote, that is not a parking space, end quote. The appellee's definition would limit legal parking to any location that is marked or otherwise demonstrably intended to allow legal parking, and forbid it otherwise. The court is tasked with applying the law as written and upholding the intention of the legislature that established it. In this case, there can be no dispute that Mr. Pericic was not parked in a marked parking space. Photographic and testimonial evidence established that Mr. Pericic was parked near a fire hydrant and alongside an unmarked curb. The court finds that Mr. Pericic was illegally parked. Despite Mr. Pericic's argument that officers could safely drive around him, this is not sufficient to establish legal parking. Specifically, and in the interest of removing ambiguity, this court holds that a vehicle is legally parked, that is to say, lawfully, if it is parked in a location intended to be used as a parking space as designated in at least one of the following ways. Bullet point. Lines painted to indicate parking spaces, such as those found in parking lots. Next bullet point. The presence of parking meters. Next bullet point. Physical infrastructure designed to accommodate parking, such as cutouts. Next bullet point. Other markings that clearly intend and permit lawful parking. This court's holding underlines and applies the intention of the legislature, which has limited legal parking to defined spaces as articulated in the citation for illegal parking. The court further notes that any changes to the citation subsequent to this ruling may expand or contract the potential opportunities for lawful and unlawful parking, but hopes that the above list may help officers and citizens to better understand the legislature's intent. On the issue of finding that Mr. Pericic was illegally parked, we affirm the trial court in the entirety for the reasons given. A second issue before the court is whether the trial court erred by finding Mr. Pericic guilty of failure to identify. As with the illegal parking, courts of appeals consider issues of this nature from the standard of review of clear error. Again, we will affirm for any reason in the record. Because this court finds that Mr. Pericic was illegally parked, the officers had reasonable suspicion that he identified himself. On the issue of the charge of failure to identify, we affirm the trial court in the entirety for the reasons given. Finally, the third issue before the court is whether the trial court erred in its issuance of contempt. Again, we affirm for any reason in the record. The court notes that an appeal of contempt offers strong deference to the trial court. The court finds that Mr. Pericic has not presented sufficient evidence of error by the trial court that would be sufficient to reverse and remand. On the issue of the trial court's issuance of contempt, we affirm the trial court in the entirety for the reasons given. This matter presented the court with the opportunity to consider and create precedent on an important matter related to everyday travel in our great state of San Andreas. The court thanks the parties for their efforts and attention and hopes that this matter provides additional clarity about the important issue of lawful parking. For the reasons given, we affirm the trial court's opinion in the entirety. Court is adjourned.
Thank you, Your Honors.
Mr. Pericic, we wanted to talk to you further. If you have a moment.
Okay, what's good, ma'am?
How are you doing, Mr. Pericic? Am I saying that correctly? Can you help me?
It's fine, whatever.
Listen, it's very important to me to be respectful and show that respect by
Luka.
Luka. Okay, all right. Well, you know, for the case of the opinion, you know, we have to write your last name. It's very formal and everything.
Mhm.
Have you ever met Rose, Mr. Luka?
Hello.
I don't think so.
All right, great. We wanted to introduce you to Rose. Why don't we go in the back?
Last time I went in the
You
back, I was
guys
locked in
need
a
us?
cell.